kept my eyes on the polished floor, weaving between the clusters of glittering gowns and tuxedos. They didn't see me, not really. Please tell me, you didn't pay for this. The words cut through the clink of glassware. Laughter followed, the kind that bounces off crystal chandeliers and lands sharp in your chest. I didn't pay for it. Another voice chimed in, breathless with amusement. But who did, and why? I slowed without meaning to, my shoulder brushing a gold-painted pillar. I didn't need to look to know what they were circling around. That thing, someone said, drawing the word out. Did she finger paint this? Between scrubbing floors. A ripple of laughter dot my painting. The one I left in the corner of the room to dry because the storage closet was full. The one I worked on during midnight breaks, when my feet ached too much to stand but my hands needed to move. It's primitive, another guest added, pausing just long enough to make it sound like a compliment, in a charming way. My fingers tightened around the tray stem. Champagne swayed in the glasses. Don't spill. Don't drop it. Don't give them anything else to talk about. Mrs. Aldridge's voice slipped through, honeyed, falsely warm. Oh, you know, the staff get creative during their downtime. My stomach twisted. Wait, a man's voice broke in. Sharper now. Are you telling me one of them painted it? Yes, Mrs. Aldridge replied with a lilting laugh. But it's harmless fun. We let them hook. His tone carried mock interest. The way a cat watches a bird. I heard the silence forming before I felt every head turned toward me. One of the women smiled like she was offering candy to a child. Was it you? The tray trembled in my hands. My throat felt small. I painted it. A burst of laughter, louder this time, like I'd just delivered the punchline to their favorite joke. Well, that's adorable, the woman said, each word dipped in sugar and poison. It's almost good. A man murmured to his companion loud enough for me to hear. She probably thinks it's art, the companion whispered back, failing to hide her grin. I stood still, tray balanced, cheeks burning so hot I thought they might light up the room. Every muscle in me screamed to turn away, but my feet were rooted. Where did you even learn to paint? Someone asked, voice feigning curiosity but curling at the edges. Probably at one of those community places, another muttered, with posters about diversity. More laughter. I swallowed hard. I learned from my grandmother. The words came out soft, almost drowned by the noise. That's sweet, one man said in the same tone he might use for a child's crayon drawing. Stuck on a fridge. She must be proud. Proud wasn't the word. She was gone, and if she could see me now, she'd know exactly what kind of people I was standing in front of. I kept my voice flat. She is. A few of them exchanged glances, smirks, tugging at their mouths. I could hear what they weren't saying. Knows her place. Harmless little thing. Do you sell these? One woman asked, eyes glittering with mock interest. I shook my head. No. She tilted hers. That's probably for the best. My breath caught. The glasses on my tray felt fragile under my grip. I wondered what sound they'd make if I dropped them on the marble dot. Mrs. Aldridge clapped her hands softly, breaking the moment. Now let's not tease. It's all in good fun. Good fun. The phrase sat heavy in my chest. I forced my feet to move, slipping away toward the far end of the room. Each step felt like pushing through water. Behind me, laughter rose again, lighter now, as if the entertainment had passed in the quiet hallway. I let out the breath I'd been holding. My hands were shaking, the champagne trembling like it could taste the humiliation too. I stared at my reflection in the polished silver of the tray, my eyes red at the edges, my jaw locked tight. They hadn't just laughed at the painting, they'd laughed at me, and worse, I'd let them. The moment the kitchen door swung shut behind me, the noise from the dining room dulled, like laughter muffled underwater. I set the tray down too hard. The glasses rattled, almost tipping over. James looked up from slicing bread, his brow furrowed. What happened? I gripped the edge of the counter, nails biting into my palms. They laughed like I was a child holding a crayon. My voice cracked on the last word. He set the knife down, leaning his hip against the counter. I heard. Of course he had. Sound travels fast in a house like this, especially cruelty. They laughed because they're afraid of anything they can't own, he said quietly. I shook my head, trying to swallow the heat in my throat. No, they laughed because they think I'm nothing. Because they can, James sighed. Same thing. I stared at the steel countertop, my reflection warped by the surface. I want to take it back. Hide it before someone spills wine on it. Or I trailed off. Before someone finishes tearing it apart. No, his voice was firm. Let them see it. My head snapped up. Why? So they can keep making jokes. He didn't flinch. Because it's yours. And even if they don't understand it, even if they pretend it's worth less than the centerpiece on the table, it's still there. Still yours. I let out a bitter laugh. You talk like that's supposed to help. It will not tonight. Maybe not next week, but one day you'll be glad you didn't let their laughter decide where your art belongs. I pressed my lips together, the words jamming in my throat. I wanted to tell him he didn't get it. That hearing them pick apart something you put pieces of yourself into wasn't just insulting, it was stripping. Peeling away skin. You know this isn't the first time, he went on. Couple years ago, Maria, the sous chef, she brought in a cake she'd decorated Spent 2 days on it. The guests cut it apart like it was a joke, didn't even eat it. My stomach twisted and she just took it. He shrugged. She quit a month later. Some people walk away. Some stay and keep their heads down. Yui's eyes pinned me. I don't think you're either. I let out a slow breath. I'm not sure what I am. You'll figure it out, he said, picking the knife back up. But don't give them the satisfaction of hiding it. I leaned against the wall, folding my arms. You make it sound like a battle. He gave a small smile. It is. The hum of the refrigerator filled the space between us. I could still hear faint laughter bleeding through the door, but it felt further away now. They'll still laugh, I said finally. Probably he didn't sugarcoat it. But maybe one day they won't. I almost asked him when that day would come. Instead, I just stood there holding on to the words like a rope I didn't want to drop. Carrying with it the sharp click of polished shoes on marble. Mrs. Aldridge's voice lifted instantly, honeyed with delight. Vincent, you made it. I'd heard the name before. Vincent Moreau. Art collector, magazine covers. The kind of man who could make a career with a single nod. Traffic. His voice replied low, steady. The kind of voice people listen to. I moved toward the far side of the room, tray balanced, head down. If I kept moving, I could avoid another round of champagne and smirks from the earlier crowd. Then I heard it. The pause, the sound of someone stopping in their tracks. What's this? Vincent's voice. Sharper now. Mrs. Aldridge laughed lightly. Oh, that, just a little staff project. Harmless fun. My stomach tightened. I didn't have to look. I knew he was standing in front of my painting. Who painted it? He asked, not idle curiosity. There was weight in it. Oh, no one. I did, I said before she could finish. The words felt like they scraped their way out of me. His eyes found mine, holding there for a moment longer than was comfortable. You painted this? I nodded. Yes. He didn't smile. He didn't laugh. He just studied it again, like he was pulling it apart in his head. It's extraordinary, he said finally. The room shifted. I could feel the air move, the shuffle of feet, the sudden silence of people who had been mid-conversation. Mrs. Aldridge chuckled, too high-pitched. Well, that's generous. I'm offering $2 million for it. Vincent cut in, voice even like it was the most natural thing in the world. Gasps. A choked laugh from somewhere near the bar. 2 million. One of the men from earlier stammered. Yes. Vincent didn't look away from me. On the condition that you sign it with your full name. I won't take it unsigned. I could feel every pair of eyes in the room on me, the same ones that had crinkled with amusement an hour ago, now wide, calculating. My throat caught. You're serious? Completely, he said. A woman who had called it primitive earlier stepped forward, her smile suddenly sweet. I always said it had depth. No, you didn't, I said without raising my voice. Her cheeks flushed, and she looked away. Vincent's gaze flicked between us, a faint curve at the corner of his mouth. I see this piece has already provoked strong reactions. Strong, I said, my voice dry. That's one word for it. Mrs. Aldridge's tone shifted to something almost maternal. Well, isn't this wonderful? Our own staff artist, discovered right here in my home. Discovered, I repeated, letting the word hang there. It's been sitting in plain sight all night. A murmur ran through the crowd. I could see the unease starting to settle. Not enough to break the evening, but enough to crack the glossy surface. Vincent glanced at me again. Do we have a deal? I swallowed. Yes. Good. He looked back at Mrs. Aldridge. I'll arrange the transfer tomorrow. In the meantime, perhaps you should let the artist enjoy the rest of her evening. Mrs. Aldridge's smile was tight, of course. I stepped back, the tray suddenly weightless in my hands. My heart was still pounding, but something else was there now, too, something I couldn't name yet, only feel. The same people who laughed had gone quiet, and for the first time that night, I didn't feel invisible. The moment Vincent's offer left his lips, the air in the room changed. It was almost funny. The same people who'd been sneering minutes ago were now smiling so hard their faces might crack. I always knew their wasteland there. A woman in pearls said, leaning toward me like we'd been friends for years. I didn't smile. That's not what you said earlier. Her eyes widened, the smile faltering. Oh well, perhaps I misspoke. No, Vincent cut in, his voice sharp but calm. She doesn't owe you politeness. I glanced at him, surprised. The way he said it, it felt like someone had just taken my side in a fight I'd been losing all my life. Darling, your brushwork is divine, another guest chimed in. The same man who'd called my colors messy. I could see the depth, all along. Strange, I said quietly. You called it primitive earlier. His face flushed. The other guests shifted uncomfortably. Champagne glasses clinking in nervous hands. People changed their minds. Someone muttered, or their audience. Vincent replied without looking up from the painting. I wanted to laugh, but my throat was tight. I'd spent years swallowing words like these, keeping my head down. Tonight, something in me was cracking open. Vincent finally turned to me. Tell me about it, the piece. I hesitated. All those eyes were on me, but for once, they weren't just waiting for me to refill their drinks. I paint because I need to remember where I came from, I said slowly, and where I'm not staying. A few of them tilted their heads, pretending to understand. Vincent's gaze stayed steady. And this one, the red in the corner, the way it bleeds into the dark, that's deliberate. My grandmother's scarf, I said, feeling my voice catch. She wore it when she left the South, said it reminded her of fire. Not the kind that destroys, but the kind that warns you to keep moving. A pause. Even the clinking glasses. When still she sounds remarkable, Vincent said she was. I answered. She used to tell me, paint the truth, even if they won't hang it on their walls. Someone coughed. A woman whispered to her friend. I didn't need to hear the words. I could feel their discomfort. Remarkable sentiment, one man said, his voice syrupy. I suppose the piece is a tribute. Then, it's survival, I said flatly. Vincent smiled faintly. And survival, he said, is worth more than beauty. Mrs. Aldridge, who'd been shifting like she was sitting on pins, suddenly stepped forward. Well, I think it's just wonderful that we can all appreciate it now. I looked at her, my tray still balanced on my hand. Now, I repeated. Her cheeks colored, and she turned to refill her wine. For the rest of the conversation, they circled like moths around a light, not because they saw me, but because Vincent had turned his attention my way. Every compliment felt like a performance. Would you ever consider showing your work in New York? One man asked. She'll consider whatever she likes, Vincent said, before I could answer, and she'll do it on her own terms. That silenced them in my head. My grandmother's voice was steady. Don't shrink yourself, baby. The world will try to do that for you. I wasn't shrinking anymore. This chapter keeps the tension high, exposes hypocrisy, and gives your protagonist quiet but growing strength. With dialogue doing the heavy lifting and narration giving just enough emotional anchor. She doesn't deserve that much. This is political correctness gone mad. I've seen better work at a flea market. I let their words settle like dust in the air, coating me but not sinking in. My grandmother used to say, if they're whispering, they're too scared to say it to your face. I wasn't sure if that was a comfort or a challenge. I slipped out toward the hallway, needing a moment away from the spotlight. That's when I heard the slow shuffle behind me. You're just lucky he felt sorry for you. A man's voice slurred. I turned. His tie was loose, his cheeks flushed, and his smile the kind that wants to poke holes in you. Lucky, I said, my voice calm, even though my pulse quickened. I don't need luck to make what you can't understand, he chuckled. Please, that painting only sold because people are afraid to look like racists. The way he said racists told me everything, mocking, dismissive, a word he thought didn't apply to him. I stepped closer. You think this was about pity? That's all it was, he said, leaning against the wall. If someone like me painted it, no one would care. I could feel my jaw tighten. If someone like you painted it, no one would laugh before they even looked at it. His grin faltered. You're making this about race. I didn't raise my voice, but every word carried weight. You made it about race when you laughed. For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the party down the hall. He looked away first. You're touchy, he muttered. No, I said, stepping past him. I'm done letting people write my worth in their handwriting. As I walked away, I thought about the way his eyes shifted, not in guilt, but in discomfort. Discomfort was a start. It meant the truth had landed somewhere, even if it was just a bruise for now. When I stepped back into the room, Vincent caught my eye. You okay? He asked under his breath. I gave a small nod. Some people choke when the taste changes. He smiled faintly. Good, let them choke. For the first time that night, I felt my spine straighten, not because I needed to defend myself, but because I realized I no longer had to explain myself to anyone in that room. The whispers didn't stop, but neither did my confidence. The room was quieter than I expected when Vincent asked me to step aside. Not the cold silence of judgment, more like the tense pause before someone tells you something they've been holding in for years. I followed him down a short hallway into a small study. The door shut behind us with a soft click. My heart thudded in my ears. He turned to me, his voice low, but sure. Vincent, I remember your work. I remember how they didn't deserve you. For a second I thought I'd misheard you. What? My throat tightened. Vincent, years ago, community art program on the South Side. Saturday mornings, you signed your work as L. Carter. The air in my chest froze. I hadn't heard that name spoken in years. I'd buried it like a gravestone no one visits. How do you even remember that? He gave a short, almost sad smile. Vincent, because your pieces stopped me in my tracks. Raw, fearless. You didn't paint for approval. You painted to be heard. I looked away, the praise landing, like both a gift and a wound. I stopped painting for 2 years because I believed them. Vincent, damn. I let out a brittle laugh. The gallery owners, the curatorial of them, they said I was too urban, that my art lacked refinement. One even told me your work belongs in street fairs, not museums. His jaw clenched. Vincent, that's not critique. That's gatekeeping wrapped in racism. I know that now, but back then, I let it sink into my bones. I thought maybe they were right, so I quit. Took the first job that would pay the rent. That's how I ended up cleaning floors instead of filling canvases. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I hated how exposed I felt, like he'd peeled back the years of armor I'd built and found the bruises still fresh underneath. Vincent, I should have said something back then. Fought for you. I shook my head. It wasn't your fight, Vincent. It's always my fight when the system is built to silence voices like yours. His words made my stomach tighten. No one had ever said it like that. Not without pity. Not without making it about themselves. Why are you telling me this now, Vincent? Because I see the same fire in you tonight that I saw back then. And I know how quickly they'll try to snuff it out. Don't let them take it again. I swallowed hard. Easier said than done. You didn't hear the whispers tonight. The little digs. The way some of them looked at me when they realized my work was worth something. Vincent, oh, I heard. I just don't care. That made me laugh. Short, sharp, almost bitter. Must be nice to not care. Vincent, it's not about not caring. It's about choosing whose voices matter. And they don't think I don't get dismissed sometimes. They see me as just another rich collector, someone who bought his way in. But I keep showing up. That's how you win. You keep showing up. His words dug into me, loosening something I hadn't realized was still stuck. You really think I can still win? Vincent, you already have. You just don't see it yet. I bit my lip, trying to keep the tears from spilling, you know. The last painting I did before I quit it was called Silenced. A woman screaming into a wall. No one ever saw it. I burned it. His eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw something almost like grief in them. Vincent then painted again, louder this time. The room seemed to tilt. That one sentence cracked open a part of me I thought was gone. My chest felt lighter, but my throat ached. I don't even know if I can. Vincent, you can, and I'll make sure the right people see it. But more importantly, you will see it. And you'll remember why you started. I stared at him, unsure if I wanted to hug him or push him away. Vulnerability felt dangerous, but so did hope. You're dangerous, Vincent. Vincent, only to the people who'd rather you stayed invisible. We stood there for a moment, in quiet understanding. No speeches, no grand gestures. Just two people in a room, one finally being seen. The other making sure she wouldn't be forgotten again. When we left the study, I could still hear the party humming in the distance. But for the first time all night, their laughter didn't sound bigger than me. Flag he was planting. 2 million, he said, loud enough for the chandeliers to rattle, and worth every penny. Gasps broke out like glass shattering. I could feel the heat of every pair of eyes burning into me. My hands shook as I took the check, not from greed, from the weight of the moment, from the knowing. Vincent turned to the crowd. She's the artist, the one you dismissed, ridiculed, laughed at. A ripple of whispers ran through them. I stepped forward before my courage could melt. A few hours ago, I said, my voice steady, you laughed. You thought I was invisible. I paused, letting the silence swell. I'm not Mrs. Aldrich. Her pearls trembling against her neck stammered. We didn't mean. I met her eyes. You meant every word. That's why it matters. A few people shifted uncomfortably, glasses clinking, as they tried to busy their hands, but no one dared look away. You saw a uniform, I continued, and decided that's all I could be. You looked at my skin, my job, and you thought you knew my worth. My chest tightened, but my voice stayed even. You were wrong. Mr. Callahan, the one who'd snorted the loudest earlier, tried to force a laugh. It was just harmless banter. Harmless to who? I asked. My gaze locked on his. It's never harmless when you're the one being cut down. It's a slow poison you pretend isn't killing you. The room went still. Even the clink of ice in a glass seemed too loud. Vincent's voice broke the silence. Art exposes truth. Tonight, it did its job. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. For years, I believed people like you when you said I didn't belong in galleries. I stopped painting because your voices were louder than mine. But not tonight. I held up the check. Tonight, this is louder. There were no polite smiles now, no tight-lipped chuckles. Just faces pale with shame or flushed with the realization that I wasn't stepping back into the shadows. Mrs. Aldrich's eyes glistened. I didn't realize that's the problem, I cut in softly. You never realize. Not until it costs you something. I took a breath, feeling the weight of years pressing against my ribs. I'm not asking for your apology. I don't need it. I just want you to remember this moment the next time you decide someone's worth before hearing their story. The silence was thick enough to choke on. No one dared move. Vincent gave a small nod, like he knew I'd just painted something they'd never be able to forget. I turned toward the door, the check still in my hand. My steps were slow, deliberate. I wanted them to see me leave not as the maid who served their drinks, but as the artist who made them swallow their laughter. Behind me, I heard someone whisper, "She's incredible." I didn't turn around. The last of the laughter had faded. 2 murmurs by the time I slipped into the kitchen. My hands were still trembling, not from carrying trays, but from everything that had just unfolded. The air smelled faintly of champagne and burnt sugar, but under it was the heavy quiet that comes after a storm. Vincent followed me in, the painting cradled in his arms as though it was something fragile enough to break if breathed on. "Help me wrap this," he said softly. I took the edge of the protective paper, my fingers brushing the corner of the canvas. The same corner they'd mocked, the same corner that now carried a $2 million promise. "I'll feature it in the fall exhibit," Vincent continued. "Front and center. They won't just see your work, they'll have to face it. A flicker of a smile tugged at my mouth. Good, let them stand there and feel what I felt. He gave a single nod, like he understood every unspoken word. Then, left to load the painting into his car. James leaned against the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching me. You know, he said, that might have been the best serving shift I've ever seen. I let out a small, incredulous laugh. Pretty sure it wasn't in the job description. Maybe not, but they'll remember tonight for the wrong reasons. You'll remember it for the right ones. I tightened the twine around the last box of dishes. They'll remember my name. His grin faded into something more serious. Good. Make them say it. The room went quiet again. Not the kind of quiet that feels empty, the kind that feels earned. My mind replayed it all in fragments. The smirks, the first cruel laugh, the way my chest had burned when I wanted to shrink away but didn't, the shift in the air when Vincent spoke my name like it mattered. I realized I didn't feel like the same woman who had walked in here hours ago, trying to stay invisible, counting the minutes until I could leave. Somewhere between the insult and the applause, I'd stopped hiding. I pressed my palm against the cool stainless steel counter, grounding myself in the moment. The party was over, but something else had begun, a version of me I hadn't met. Until tonight, I untied my apron, folded it slowly, and set it on the counter. Outside, a car door shut. Vincent was gone. The house would be empty soon. But I stayed a moment longer, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the echo of my own steady breathing. It was the quiet after the storm, and for once the quiet was mine.